I spent most of my life during the Cold War, and I never lost sight of one overwhelming reality, that at any time the Cold War could turn hot, resulting in the extinction of our civilization. Now, inexplicably, we are recreating many of the conditions of the Cold War. Indeed, I believe that today the likelihood of a nuclear catastrophe is actually greater than it was during the Cold War. The relations between the United States and Russia are as hostile as they were during the Cold War. Russia has dropped its long-term policy of no first use of nuclear weapons, and it is rebuilding its Cold War nuclear arsenal. It's threatening its neighbors with these deadly weapons, and indirectly threatening the United States. Rising to this challenge, the United States has begun rebuilding its Cold War nuclear arsenal. We seem to be determined to replay the Cold War arms race, with costs estimated at more than $1 trillion and with terrible dangers. Have we simply forgotten the immense dangers of the Cold War? Several times during the Cold War, we faced the danger of a nuclear war by miscalculation, most dramatically during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Have we forgotten the Cuban Missile Crisis? I shall never forget it. I was there during that crisis, working with a small team that studied new intelligence data and prepared a daily report for President Kennedy. So I knew exactly what was going on. Indeed, every morning when I went into the analysis center, I believed would be my last day on Earth. After the crisis, President Kennedy said that he believed we had a 1 chance in 3 of going to a nuclear war. But he did not know when he made that estimate what we now know, that the Soviet Union had already placed tactical nuclear weapons on the island which were fully operational. Had Kennedy accepted the recommendations of his Joint Chiefs of Staff to invade Cuba, our troops would have been decimated on the beachhead, and a general nuclear war would surely have followed. The miscalculations of Soviet and American leaders almost subjected the world to a nuclear holocaust. And I believe we avoided that catastrophe as much by good luck as by good management. Today, because of the ongoing hostility between the United States and Russia, we are recreating the conditions that could lead to a nuclear war by miscalculation. A higher risk is that of an accidental nuclear war. Because of our launch on warning policy, an accidental war could result if our missile attack warning system experienced a false alarm. During the Cold War, there were 3 such false alarms in the United States and 2 that I know of in the Soviet Union. That averages to be about 1 every 8 years. I personally experienced one of the false alarms in the United States, and it changed forever my way of thinking about nuclear dangers. It occurred in October of 1979, when I was the Undersecretary of Defense. The call was from a watch officer at a North American Air Defense Command. The general got right to the point, telling me that his computers were showing 200 missiles on the way from the Soviet Union to the United States. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought we were about to experience the Holocaust that we had narrowly escaped during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But the general quickly explained that he had already concluded that it was a false alarm, and that he was calling me to help him determine what had gone wrong with his computer. There is a sequel to that story. I could not that night determine what had gone wrong, since the indicator looked very much like a real attack. It took us several days to determine what had in fact happened. When the computer operators changed shift that night, the new operator mistakenly poured a training tape in the computer, which is of course designed to look like a realistic attack scenario. But what of that false alarm had occurred during the Cuban Missile Crisis. In that context, the watch officer surely would have passed the alarm on to the President, who, on being awoken at 3 o'clock in the morning, would have had less than 10 minutes to decide whether to launch our ICBMs before they were destroyed in their silos. Had he ordered the launch, the President would have started a global nuclear war by accident. Humans will err again. Machines will malfunction again. So we will have more false alarms. So today, just as in the Cold War, we face the possibility of an accidental war destroying our civilization. Besides the return of those two Cold War dangers, we have two new dangers: a regional nuclear war or a nuclear terror attack. A regional nuclear war is not a remote possibility. Just a few months ago, Pakistan threatened to destroy India in response to a border skirmish. And that is not just rhetoric. Pakistan has over 100 nuclear weapons, which are more than enough to destroy India. India, of course, would retaliate with its 100 nuclear weapons. That nuclear exchange would not only kill millions of people in India and Pakistan, but would deposit enough dust and soot in the stratosphere to lower temperatures all over the globe by several degrees for as long as 10 years. This would cause massive crop failures and starvation among the most vulnerable members of our planet, leading to social and political turmoil. The final nuclear danger is an act of nuclear terrorism. In my view, this is the most likely way a nuclear catastrophe could occur. We know that Al-Qaeda and ISIL have made attempts to get nuclear weapons, and I believe that if they get one, they will use it. The barrier to their achieving that objective is the difficulty of making fissile material the fuel of a nuclear bomb. But if they could somehow obtain a shoebox full of highly enriched uranium, they could make an improvised nuclear device, one that could be delivered in a truck or a freighter and detonated with the power of the Hiroshima bomb. In sum, the nuclear powers in the last decade have recreated the nuclear dangers of the Cold War, an accidental nuclear war or a nuclear war by miscalculation. And since the Cold War ended, two new nuclear dangers have arisen: nuclear terrorism or a regional nuclear war. So I believe that the likelihood of a nuclear catastrophe today is greater than it was during the Cold War. Because of my concern for this potential catastrophe, I have dedicated my life to an educational program designed to alert the world to this danger. I started this effort with a memoir, My Journey at the Nuclear Brink, and a Stanford course. But I realized that much more is needed. I recognize that my book will only be read by tens of thousands, and my course will only teach a few hundred students at Stanford a year. But to be truly effective, I need to get this message across to millions, which means I have to go to the internet. I have prepared for YouTube a video on nuclear terrorism and have underway 3 other such YouTube videos. And I have produced an online course called Living at the Nuclear Brink, Yesterday and Today, that can be accessed not just by hundreds of students at Stanford, but hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. In sum, I hope to help influence a new generation dedicated to ending this terrible threat of nuclear extinction facing us today. This is a universal program, it is nonpartisan, and it is international. People all over the world, regardless of their nationality, should be interested in working to give their generation and future generations a chance to live their lives without fear of nuclear extinction. I'm devoting the remainder of my life to this educational project because I want to do all I can to lower the nuclear dangers we all face. I am only one person, so considering the immensity of the problem, I cannot do everything. But I can do something. And I hope that with your help, we can together make a real difference. Thank you.